Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at Bet Boxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel Let's Talk Boxing. Before we do, as you can see, it's a beautiful sunny day outside, the blue skies, the sun's out, the birds are chirping, and Chris Andre's sitting in here in this office room in the home bringing you guys a boxing video. You see how dedicated I am, just sitting here with my Chris Andre boxing mug. Can you guys believe I made a Chris Andre boxing mug? What a nerd, man. I might have to start making some Chris Andre merchandise as well. Could you imagine I start turning up to boxing events wearing Chris Andre t-shirts? What a nerd. But anyway, I'm here bringing you guys videos because we've had some really big breaking news. I was actually going to bring you a video about Anthony Joshua today, discussing some of the comments he's made regarding Joe Joyce, which in my opinion reveals what may have happened between these two behind the scenes, which is quite interesting regarding Anthony Joshua's mindset. What I'll end up doing is making that video later tonight probably and bringing it out tomorrow, because this breaking news takes precedent, and that is that Amir Khan has failed a drugs test for the fight with KELL BROOK, and he's been banned for 2 years, which is about as useful as an inflatable dartboard, because the man has been retired and I doubt he's going to make a comeback anytime soon. But in theory, it does set an example if they're going to continue with this sort of ban, this sort of punishment. Now, the substance is Ostarine, which is an anabolic agent. It's banned in and out of competition at all times. So this is not like the Billy Joe Saunders case where there was a discrepancy with one drugs testing board organization saying no, this is banned at all times, others saying it's only banned in competition, and so on and so forth. There's no grey area here. This is an anabolic agent. Now, there are trace levels, and Amir Khan has said he has no idea how it's gotten into his system. It's such a small trace element that he's suggesting it may have even been from shaking somebody's hand, a bodybuilder's hand, for instance, who may have taken this substance himself. Now, BEN SHALOM has told everybody that he was not made aware of this until today, and that even Robert Smith of the British Board of Boxing Control was not made aware of this until today. It's broken via social media, and he says there are a lot of questions that need to be asked. Why has it taken over a year for this sort of thing to come out publicly? The thing is, though, Amir Khan was also saying back in January 2022 in an interview with IFL TV that he hadn't been tested 5 weeks into camp, and that he was pushing for the testing to be carried out properly, essentially. Well, this contrasts what BEN SHALOM was saying in an interview today. He was saying it was one of the most heavily tested events they've ever had, with Hearn out in the US, KELL BROOK out in Tenerife. He was saying the testing was incessant. Well, that's quite a key thing to consider here, because they've paid an awful lot of money. If Amir Khan was not tested for 5 weeks into camp and he's calling for it, well, firstly, does that suggest that he was clean and he was trying to, bring a magnifying glass onto this fight? Or will the cynics out there turn around and say Khan knew all about cycling, he tried to cycle off of it, he didn't think it would be in his system, so he started calling for testing after 5 weeks when he thought, I'm okay here, let's hope we catch KELL BROOK with something. That's what a cynic would say. You let me know where you stand on that. And people are already trolling Amir Khan, right? PacMan Joe, who's a bit of a troll on Twitter, he put out quite a funny tweet actually. He was saying how Amir Khan should have just put out a 270-page dossier, and the WBC would have found the excuse for him that he started consuming too many eggs. So a lot of people are looking at this and they're saying, what is going on in the sport of boxing? When it came to Amir Khan himself, he did bring about his scientific team to make the case that the levels that were present were consistent potentially with unintentional contamination. However, UKAD rejected this because there was no way of tracking the supposed sample. So they said, yes, there's no proof that it was intentional, but there's also no evidence to suggest it wasn't. It's just a speculative theory to say that, yes, it's possible that it was via contamination. They haven't been able to track the source of the actual contamination, because Khan was suggesting potentially it could have been just from shaking somebody's hand, or it may have been from contamination of a supplement. And they put out a statement to say, therefore, contrary to what the athlete asserts, based on the scientific evidence, deliberate use of Ostarine in either microdoses or pharmacologically effective dose is entirely possible. In other words, this does not clear Amir Khan. There has been a 2-year ban. Now, one of the things that Amir Khan said just in an interview, not part of the scientific sort of defense of his position, say, was that there's no way that I took PEDs. I mean, did you see my performance against KELL BROOK? As if somebody who's going to perform like that took performance enhancing drugs. Now, I thought that was really funny, but again, it's just shocking. It's like me saying, yeah, I took a little blue pill, right, as a performance enhancing drug, but not performances in sport, a different type of performance, and I still happen to disappoint the woman that I tried to please. That doesn't prove I didn't take the pill. What are you talking about, Amir? But one of the things that you do need to consider, in addition to that, is why so many people seem to try to use this concept. Well, he doesn't look like he takes PEDs. For instance, if somebody's a little bit chubby, or if they haven't performed particularly well, or if they do perform very well, oh, he must have been using PEDs. There is a general misconception as to how performance enhancing drugs work. I think that movies like Rocky, for instance, where he fights Ivan Drago, they affect the public consciousness, because people seem to think if you take PEDs, you're going to become a killer. And this is why there was this massive furore around this idea that Conor Benn could have killed Chris Eubank Jr. Now listen, of course, if any supplement's going to make you stronger, faster, give you better rates of recovery, if it's going to give you more stamina, then in a contact sport, the logic tells you that it makes you more dangerous as a fighter, right? It makes you more effective, more efficient in terms of trying to batter someone, which is potentially dangerous. But the increase in those areas is not as significant as a lot of people might assume. Right? In other words, you are not going to turn into Ivan Drago. Bear in mind, when you're talking about Rocky, Apollo Creed's based on Muhammad Ali. So when people are watching those movies, they're looking at that and they're thinking, wow, man, like this guy took PEDs and he basically killed Muhammad Ali in the ring inside 2 rounds. The reality is somewhat different. PED use is so rife. People do not realize how rife it is. It is very common. I made a video which I would implore you to check out if you haven't seen it, or even if you want a little bit of a refresher. It was a popular video. It got over 5,000 views. It's called "What Percentage of Boxers Use PEDs? Should PEDs be legal?" It's a longer title than that, but that's the first part. You can find it in my videos. And it basically talks about how rife performance enhancing drugs are. For instance, in 2008, in the Olympic Games, 7 athletes failed tests. However, what they did is they introduced something called retrospective testing, where they kept the samples of fighters and they tested them again 10 years down the line with more effective and more advanced testing methods. And they also observed the biological profiles of those fighters within that 10-year period. So they've seen what is typical. How many red blood cells does this person typically produce? Why did they have an abnormal spike in 2008 during the Olympic Games and stuff like that? So by observing these guys 10 years after the fact, they found a further 65 athletes that were dirty. In other words, only 9.7%, 10% of athletes were initially caught being dirty. So if you consider that in boxing, even if you think it's that same rate, which it could be a lot higher because testing is not as stringent, but let's just say, conservatively speaking, we say it's only 9.7% of athletes that are caught cheating. Imagine how many fighters take PEDs. Your favorite fighter, whoever he might be, if he's clean, there is no doubt that he has fought guys that are dirty. In other words, it's not going to make you into this killer. It will improve you by certain percentage points, and those percentage points are significant. And I disagree, by the way, with legalizing performance enhancing drugs, something that a lot of fighters have said, just do it. Tyson Fury has said it, Sonny Edwards has said it. These people will say, listen, it just level the playing field and there's nothing more to hide, sort of thing. We all know what we're getting into. However, the fact of the matter is, I'm against that, because that slight increase of making a fighter more dangerous could lead to something devastating, and that's why I'm against it. But there is a general misconception. In other words, just because Amir Khan performed poorly, that's not a defense. It doesn't mean that because you might not have looked the part that you're somehow clean. I mean, of the top 10 fastest men ever recorded, only 3 have not failed PED tests, right? And one of them was Maurice Green, who has faced allegations and there's been rumours. So the only 2 that are clean without rumours are Usain Bolt and Richard Thompson. Everyone else you can think of probably has failed a PED test. Tyson Gay, Joanne Blake, Asafa Powell, Justin Gatlin, Christian Coleman, Nestor Carter, Steve Mullings. They've all failed drugs tests. And the reason this is significant is to show you that, yes, it can obviously improve you, but the guys that are cheating or caught cheating are not so far ahead of the rest that have been clean or not caught cheating that it makes you think, okay, it's created something superhuman here. It does increase you by percentage points, and that can be the difference between winning and losing. And in 100 meters, it's significant as well, right? In a contact sport though, it's more dangerous for sure. So I can understand the people's opposition to this. But the point is, you cannot just look at performance and assume this guy looks wedge, he looks muscular, so he must be on PEDs. This guy was blasting people out, he must be on PEDs. Whereas this guy doesn't look great, so he's clearly clean. It doesn't quite work like that. Furthermore, a lot of PED use can actually improve you for a number of years, even after you stop taking it. And I say improve, I'm talking about athletic performance. I would not condone or encourage you guys to go out there and start using PEDs, right? Because there is a knock-on effect and it can cause some serious health issues down the line. For instance, steroid use, anabolic steroids, it's essentially, if you're talking about growth hormones, well, that causes growth in muscle and stuff like that, but it also causes growth in organs. It can cause an enlarged heart. It can encourage the growth of cancers and stuff like that. So don't assume that, yeah, this is a great thing to do. But when I'm saying improvement, I'm talking about in certain elements of performance when it comes to athleticism, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is because with regards to Conor Benn, there's this idea that all of a sudden he's just going to look terrible and not produce any power. That's not necessarily the case. Yes, it's possible that that extra percentage points that he may have added to his system by intentionally or unintentionally, depending on what you believe, I'll leave that to you, ingested something that was performance enhancing. He's benefited from that, there's no doubt, but it doesn't mean he's suddenly going to become feather-fisted after the fact. Let me know what you think about this issue with Amir Khan. What needs to be done now with regards to Ben Shalom's comments? Now, some additional food for thought. The adverse finding was taken from a sample that was extracted on the day of the fight. So the fight was always going to go ahead. By the time they tested it and then the results came back, obviously it would have been after the fact. But Amir Khan had a rematch clause in place. Is it possible that he was informed of the adverse finding? Maybe the relevant people involved were informed too. We're just speculating here. And they said to Amir, listen, you're not going to be allowed to go ahead with the rematch clause. Just keep your mouth shut, retire from the sport. And then they tried to sweep it under the carpet. Rob Tebber put out a tweet to say, with a positive UCAD test, they informed the offending party, in this case Amir Khan, the British board and the promoter of the event, in this case Boxer. Which means that while people have been screaming to high heaven about Conor Benn, the failed test has been known in the background. Now, Ben Shalom has claimed, like I said, that he and Robert Smith have only been informed today. What does that mean? Were Boxer not informed by UCAD? Or is Ben Shalom saying that Boxer were informed and he wasn't? You know, it wasn't passed on through the hierarchy of the organization? I don't know. These are important questions that need to be asked. However, do you judge this in the same way as Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn? Because Ben had failed tests in the build-up to the fight. Now, from what we've been led to understand, the relevant parties were informed. Conor Benn was informed, Chris Eubank Jr. was informed, Eddie Hearn was informed, the British board were informed, and Eddie Hearn said, listen, this is a VADA test, you guys have said you don't recognise it in other cases, you need to make a decision. This is Eddie Hearn's version of events. Is that different from this? Because it would have meant they were willing to go ahead with the fight, whereas we have to assume that Ben Shalom may have not been willing to go ahead with the fight, and perhaps had a little whisper in the ear of Amir Khan. Or do you see it differently and say, I don't care whether he whispered in his ear and told him to retire. The fact of the matter is they swept this under the carpet. It was a scandal they tried to hide. Or perhaps you believe Ben Shalom and maybe UCAD did not inform Boxer, in which case the entire process broke down and we need to then look at this and it needs to be revamped. Let me know what you think and your position on this whole thing. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notification button. Chris Andre is about to go out and enjoy the sun. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.